Hey everybody, welcome back to the fourth prediction video in the series. Today we're going to be focusing on Faze Clan and Power in their matchup. Winner of them plays the winner of Team Liquid and Falcons, which I know many of you are excited for me to try to break down. Try is a key word there. We're going to talk about Faze Clan first, strengths and weaknesses. Then we're going to talk about Power, strengths and weaknesses. And then after that, I'll give you my verdict on who I think is going to win the best of 5. So first things first, before we get into it, if you guys do enjoy this type of content, a lot of you have had a lot of really positive comments. Really appreciate it. If you could also give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, notifications so you see more of these. It does help me and the video out greatly. But that said, Faze Clan, strengths. We're going to start off. Surprisingly enough, a very solid kickoff on Faze Clan. They do a good job of mixing it up, and it's kind of tough to read. Something that many people may not focus on as much. While it's not as effective as G2's, which we'll talk a lot about in the future, Faze Clan particularly does a really unique thing with their kickoffs and the capability that the way that they go about challenging it, whether it is kicked back towards the back left or back right, depending on if it's a diagonal or not, whether they decide to concede the kickoff so they get possession, or if they decide to just outright win it and be very aggressive with their challenge, they are a tough one to kind of guess on how they're going to go about doing it. There is some teams that historically will not go for certain things, which we don't need to talk about in too much in detail, because Eclipse was one pointing that out, and then he's like, I probably shouldn't have said that because now they're going to change it. But there's certain teams like Furia that have a very distinct decision. Like, they are very specific about how they go about kickoffs, and they do not break from it. While FaZe could do that, they decide not to. They keep it mixed up, and usually they do not concede. Like, their challenges on the 50 on that initial kickoff is really solid. Next strength is they're great at building offense out of nowhere. Something about a lot of really mechanical teams. I talk about the margin of error in the past. Faze is another one of those rosters, just like Moist, just like Liquid. Teams that have a ton of mechanical talent. It may be an ugly touch, may not be the best pass, may not be a pinch that goes in the right direction, but I can guarantee you someone like First or AJ or even Typical is going to be able to get a good touch on it and turn it into something, whether it be a flip reset, a good pass, a drop down to their teammate, what have you. They will turn something that is poor into something good due to the mechanics on their roster. Whether Mr. Editor wants to throw that up as mechanics as one of their strengths, whether he wants to talk about margin of error or whatever, we'll have to wait and see. But they do have the ability to make something out of nothing or something poor into something good. I usually describe that as a margin of error due to their mechanics. Up next, they do have a very fluid play style. They are super deadly in their counterattacks and in their rotations. It seems to be that they have found a really good way to reduce double commits. They still happen here and there, but for the most part, their players will make a clean rotation. They will continuously move around the field. So when the time does come where they need to make a save, not only is it a save, it's pushed into the corner, which then allows them to grab the corner boost and then turns it into an air dribble. And all this happens very seamlessly. That applies on offense and defense when they work in through demos and everything else. Very fluid playstyle. They kind of just have a flow to them that makes them really tough to predict. Now, if you disrupt that flow, that's a different story, and we'll talk about that. Overall, one of the best reactionary teams. This is actually credit coming from Chrome, the coach of Space Station, that states that they are probably the best Rocket League team when they are reactionary in their play. He would say, and I would agree, that Europe's is probably Liquid. We've been watching a lot of Liquid scrims this week, and they live up to that to the fullest degree. But the ability to, rather than having like a concrete game plan, just react and then play instinctually is something that's really underrated. While it can be punished, it is something that when you have that in your repertoire, you never really are out of the match. So awesome to see that out of Faze Clan. And on the other side, they don't really need demos. They have disruptive play, but because they have so many options on player skill, every person as an individual has the capability to hit the flip resets and do the crazy mechanics. They don't really need to demo. They can, but they don't need to. They just focus primarily on denying corner boosts and disrupting in that sense, where they make it where they suffocate teams on offense with sustained pressure. And then the other side of it too is they infield pass a ton. It's almost every single time that they go for an individual play, it kind of like careens out into the corner, and then immediately someone's on that sidewall and they launch it back infield. Usually from the right side of the field. I don't know why it doesn't happen as much when they're on the left side of the field, but I've seen so many clips of Faze on the right side of the field where they just blast a pass in midfield and it gets put top left every single time. It's pretty crazy. And then even if not, it's a little bit softer top right and it comes back where it came from. or so help me. Shout out to Mike Wazowski. That was a lame joke. I apologize. But there is a really deadly infield pass from Faze Clan. Even though you think the high-flying mechanics and the flip resets, their infield passes are something to be wary of too. And it's a great way to open up space on the field because it may be a ton of challenges on the back line or on the goal line when it comes to above the backboard. And then all of a sudden, it's kicked out to the top of the 18 and you see an upper 9 on a one-time. It's crazy how well they make it work. On other weaknesses for Faze Clan, there is some major flaws on defense. There's a lot of time when things aren't fluid or when the rotation isn't clean. I talk about that fluidity in their playstyle. If you find ways to disrupt that, or if the touch that they're looking for just goes a little bit off, while they have the mechanics to make up for it, if they are found flat-footed or there's a little bit of hesitation, and you can force that hesitation, which is possible with bumps, demos, boost denies, shot fakes, things like that, they kind of just fall apart. They crumble. If they cannot keep their clean rotation, they get disrupted so easily. It's unbelievable. The difficulty is trying to do that. They're very elusive. Very, very elusive. So they do have some major flaws on defense. It's just a matter of how you find ways to break that down. The other side, and this was something that talks about the communication side of things. This was a lot of insight brought by Chrome, and he talks a lot about Sipical. Sipical tends to have delayed comms, and I don't know if that's changed or gotten better. That's something that he can provide, but he talks about how a lot of the times when Sipical, because he is a generally quiet kid, does not always articulate or express his thoughts and opinions as fast as he should. They come a little bit after the fact, so you are then having to play makeup for the call that is made. Hopefully that's something that's worked on, and it was a concern as well for Faze previously, even though they keep making top 4. When they got rid of Illusion was a big vocal leader for that team, and when they removed him and brought in Sipical, I'm like, there's also no vocal leader on this team. So I'm curious on who stepped up on the team, the one that is being more vocal and helping out and kind of driving home this hive mind of, hey, this is what we want to accomplish, everybody follow suit. So it seems to be, and what can be a problem is their comms, there is some wary too. The team itself, I've noticed, is a bit more quiet, but I don't know if AJ has stepped up a little bit more as the captain or what's happening with that. But from what it seems like, when things do fall apart, it seems to be a communication breakdown more than anything. So hopefully communication is good, and if you got people chirping you on the other side of the field, maybe that gets in the head. That could be something that could be a detriment. And then just to reiterate, I did talk about the fluidity on offense, on defense as well. If you can disrupt them, they fall apart. Their defense is susceptible to the ability to break down very quickly if you break up that fluid motion. If you find a way to get them uncomfortable, it is the contrast of not having a dedicated structure. Because they are playing very reactionary, they don't have something that they fall back on to rely on, and you then pair that with poor communication. Say you're on defense and that touch doesn't go your way, or a mistake happens. Those clean rotations and making sure that you stay to a structure of like, hey, this is the base level that we rely on. We always have something to go back to. Say mental starts to take a dip, any of that kind of stuff. It all starts to crumble down and goes hand over fist. So need to be a little bit careful with that, but primarily they are a team that as an overall has potential to pop off. We saw what they did in Regional 1 and the very last regional between fall and spring. They can, without a doubt, just completely come in and dominate. Same thing with teams like Moist, Liquid, and all these other high-flying rosters. So they have and sometimes lack the consistency at the high level, but when they pop off, they're unbeatable. So Faze is a fun one to watch. Their opponent on the other side is the one and only Team Power, a team that had actually some pretty big flaws and some pretty big struggles, but over the last, I would say, split, a little bit of a resurgence, performing quite a bit better. Talked with Yummy Cheeseman and some others about this one, and sat down with Amphis and did some replay analysis with him as well during one of their scrims. Their strengths, they're incredibly experienced. Outside of Card, Torsos, also another player who has been to pretty much every single LAN that OCE has been capable of attending, and that helps a lot. The ability to tell some of these newer players like Amphis what things are like, how they apply, that can help a lot. The been there, done that mentality helps a ton with these grueling one upset type matches. Say, for example, Power wins this match. Okay, they're now guaranteed 9 through 12. And what that does for standings overall for Power in particular puts them then in the running of going to the World Championship. So again, all you need is one upset. That's it. That's all you need to do. So Power is a team that also has been kind of remotivated. There's a little bit of momentum going with Power. I talk about how recently they've been starting to find their groove again. And what that does for a team and the capabilities of them moving forward is really, really big. This team, for me in particular, has always struggled with Torsos. Torsos always tends to kind of get down on himself. He puts a lot of pressure on himself, and you can see visually that frustration if you go back and look at previous lands. When they lose or when they start getting eliminated, you can visibly tell that there is frustration and it is affecting the rest of the plays, and there's kind of this like blame game going on almost. And that stuff can be a problem. But because the vibes are immaculate right now, things are going good, that allows this team to just play completely different. Over the course of their scrims as well, something that I've seen is while they do have the mechanical play and the talent on that side of things, I don't think it compares to the Pioneers. I think Pioneers beat them out on that. Torsos in particular is definitely a difference maker. I've seen him numerous times as one of the only KBM players where it looks like he is about to be beaten. And then as with a Dominus, ironically enough, he finds a way to make a unique touch and extend plays. Power does a really good job of surprising you. And I think that is something that goes to their advantage. There's a lot of teams that I think are not going to expect them to hit the things they do. And it's not just Torsos. Express just hit a crazy upside down redirect off the backboard. We also saw Amphis continue to extend plays and was known as one of the more mechanical players. This is a team that will surprise you. I think they're underrated. Surprisingly enough, despite them being here consistently, obviously this is kind of a new addition for this season, but Power, Cringe Society, whatever they go by, Ground Zero, has been a team that's been around for a long time, and they continue to be here. That experience, that surprise, I guess if you want to call it, and the low expectations from the rest of the people may give them an advantage. I think this could be something that they could take a couple surprise games off of Faze, and then all of a sudden, here they are. They're on match points. So that is something that they need to be careful of. They're also boot camping a ton. They are one of the earliest teams to get out to boot camp, so they are being exposed to a lot of different play styles, getting advantages over some of the other teams, and who knows how that's going to affect, but minimal jet lag and everything else. Power's boot camp, probably a big deal. And one of their other big ones is they are playing a more structured play style. In the past, it used to be kind of loosey-goosey all over the place, and it made them very difficult to play. But once they got figured out, they fell apart. Seems to not be the case as much. They usually keep themselves in there because they are developing more of a structure to their play style. There is a little bit of reliability of, hey, things aren't working. Let's go back to what we know, and then from there, we'll build off of it. Because they can always revert back to what they know, that then allows them to adjust and make different decisions. And their last strength is actually their coach in Jimmer. Jimmer has won Coach of the Year in OC for quite a few years, except for the one where the entire scene memed and made me coach. I don't understand. But the biggest thing there is I think Jimmer provides a lot of insight to them. He keeps them very well grounded and helps them a lot with the traveling side of things. Having them behind them, I think, is a big advantage for them as well. So big strength. Shout out to Coach Jimmer. Does a really good job with that team. As for the weaknesses, they have been very inconsistent, and I hope that doesn't come back to bite them. While I do think it is a pro that some momentum is being built, there's also still always that underlining of they could also fall apart. So I do think that inconsistency is something prevalent. I've seen that also in their scrims. There's been times where they look really, really good. There's been other times where they look a little bit flat or just get completely overwhelmed. I don't know the right answer for their defense at times too. There is some things that I think they struggle. They are very susceptible to teams that do play very quickly. I watched them play against a team like Liquid and stuff where they just get completely out-mechanicked and there's nothing they can do. Liquid pairs tons of crazy challenges, tons of disruption. I think Atao even hit Extermination in one of their scrims. But fundamentally, they're fine. But when other teams overwhelm and play super aggressive, there's not a whole lot they can do. I just feel like they get capped at a certain level of play after a certain point, and there's no way for them to peak higher than that. I think they're going to be competitive, but I don't think their peak is all that great. I just have never seen it. I've never seen them have such crazy pop-off in international play to where I'm like, dang, they could do it all. They haven't convinced me that they have that capability within them, which is really unfortunate because they've got some really talented players. So the inconsistency and then paired with like them being skilled, their skill cap is lower than some of the other teams. I think they are going to just be limited by the talent that they provide. Even though the players have still kept up and played well over the years and stuff, I just think they just get outplayed simply by some of the better teams. The other side of things, and I've talked with Amphis about this a little bit, is it feels like things are a little bit off with him in particular, and I don't know why that is. He and I discussed some things behind closed doors that I'm not going to share, but recently, if you look at his results, Amphis was kind of the end-all to be-all. He answered a lot of questions. He was kind of like their version of Beast Mode on version 1, where he came in and he's just like, this team is immediately a contender now. Same thing with like Yana and Furia. This one player is enough to make us compete towards the top. And when he is not performing as well, they're very reliant on him. that it then comes back to Torsos, who has struggled sometimes on land. So they need that kind of like pop-off player to look good, and that player in particular hasn't been living up to that hype. So there is some concerns that way, but the biggest, I think, weaknesses from them is obviously a little bit of inconsistency. The results just haven't been... I just think they get skill capped after a certain point. Their star player isn't performing to the level that he could. Again, still like 2 weeks out, should be fine. And then the biggest concern is I don't know if they have the capability to adjust to the faster play style. While they have shown some resilience, like when they're winning, they're good. They're winning when they're good in OCE. And that's not to discredit the region, but I just haven't seen that against the main regions. While we have seen like way back Chiefs come in with Drip A and stuff and surprise against like NRG, I haven't really seen it out of Power in this roster iteration, the capability to compete against the top dogs. And all their scrims against Europe and NA and stuff, I just haven't seen them come up and just smack the other team. I haven't seen that like complete shutdown. They'll stay competitive. They'll keep it close, but they'll always be one step behind. And I don't know the answer for them to get ahead of it. I don't know. And that's where I want to give credit to Jimma. I think he'll be able to figure it out, but you're going up against a very high mechanical team that I've seen you struggle against in the past. And maybe with less demos, you have a bit of a chance. But primarily, I don't know if they're going to have the capability to compete against that echelon of talent. So some concerns with Power, which kind of spells out the last part of this video, which is my verdict. Looking at both teams, I think you've got a fast, fluid team with play styles that make it difficult on offense. I do think if Power kind of settles in and finds a way to control the pace against a North American team that I think they can. A lot of times with NA teams, they like to slow it down a little bit on defense so they can then bring it out. If they're low on boost, they'll like be a little bit more reserved and then go out, while EU is just like, no, go, go, go all the time. That should provide a little bit of space for Power. And Power does the same thing. When they're under pressure, they understand that, yes, we need to trap the ball, we need to force a 50 and build a little bit of time so we can get back into formation. EU doesn't really allow that from what I've seen lately, and NA does. So if Faze isn't going to disrupt, Power should be relatively okay. I think Power's going to put on a lot more shots than expected, I think, against Faze, but they may surprise here and there. They may have one of those shots and stuff that go the other way. Primarily, I do think Power can maybe start with a win and come out of the gates and catch Faze off guard. But as soon as Faze goes, oh shoot, we got to like buckle in, I think it's all over. So I'm going to go Faze on this one. I got Faze 3-1. I don't think anybody else really thinks it's going to go any other way. But Faze might have a little bit of a slow start, and then from there, they will smooth sailing. That's what I've got. Faze 3-1 in the series over Power. Power will drop down and play the loser of Team Liquid and Falcons. Also a really tough match. Not only for me to predict, but also for Power to have to play against. So that is what I have. Pretty easy one on this one, I think. Primarily, I'm looking forward to an upset. Maybe we can be proven wrong. Always a fan of that. But as of right now, Faze on top. And NA going to be moving in to the top 9 through 12. A lot of implications that the Renegades team over in OCE is watching with both the OCE teams playing, because they are not in the wild card just yet. So that's going to do it for another video. Predictions all wrapped up for the day. If you guys have any additional questions, comments, concerns, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know who you have winning. And while you're down there, if you do enjoy the content, consider giving it a thumbs up. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. And we'll see you in the next one tomorrow. Peace.